Hey friends and book lovers, welcome. Today I am talking about all the books that I want to read in July. I've kept this list fairly short. I think I'm talking about just 7 books for this month, only because there are other books that I want to get to, and those books I've left off only because I feel like I talk about them a lot and I never get to them just because things get so crazy and hectic and I switch books out. So I'm trying a different strategy this month. I am talking about less books in my TBR in hopes that I'll get to these books for my wrap up and be able to talk about them at the end of the month. And for the books that I'm not sure if I'm gonna get to, I haven't included them in this video only because I'm not sure I'm gonna get to them. And if I do, I'll talk about them in my weekly wrap ups and my weekly updates. And then I'll also talk about them in my monthly wrap up. So if that works, I might do this plan in the next month, or I might bring back like books that I'm thinking about reading but not really sure, because I feel like last month in June for the Olympics readathon I talked about so many books and I obviously only got to about half of them, and I also ended up switching other books in and out just to fulfill prompts and to get more points. So that original TBR didn't completely happen. You guys will see in the wrap up for June what I ended up reading, but it was a bit of a mess. So I'm trying a new system for July. So even though for those books I am trying to shuffle out the ones that I've already talked about, there are still a few in this video that I've talked about before, and I hesitate to present them to you because you all know about them. But there are ones that I really need to get to and series that I really want to finish, and ones that I'm really hoping to just kind of finish in the summer. The first one being Wall of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. I think I'm going to finally get to this in July. I also have a buddy read going on with this with Andrew over on Get Right On In. He does like AuthorTube and BookTube. So we're going to read this hopefully together once he's done his reread of Final Empire, and that will be fun. That will get me motivated to get through this book. I'm actually excited, so it's not about getting through it, it's just about getting to it and finishing it, but it has been chunky. So for the readathon, I've just been trying to read chunky books but also get the points for my team. It was a ride, y'all. So I'm not going to go into the synopsis for this one only because it is a second in a series and I don't want to spoil it. If I talk about this one, it spoils the first one. But if you haven't read it, Final Empire is the first one in the Mistborn trilogy era 1, and this is the second one in the Mistborn trilogy era 1, which I am very excited to get to because if you don't know, in my May wrap up, I really did enjoy the Final Empire. The second book that I'm going to talk about is also a sequel, so I can't go too much into the plot, and that is Valor by John Gwynne. I cannot believe that I haven't finished this quartet yet, but I really haven't finished it. I read Malice and I really enjoyed it. I think apart from it being a little bit slow and with too many POVs to get used to at the beginning, it was a really good book, and I really enjoyed John Gwynne's writing style above anything else. So I'm excited to get to Valor. Everyone says Valor is like mountains above Malice, which signifies to me that since I liked Malice as much as I did, I'm gonna love Valor even more. So very much looking forward to this one. I have some hesitations because I've heard that John Gwynne has no problem killing off his characters, so I'm going into this with as little attachment as possible because I don't want to get my heart broken. But somehow I think this and Wrath and Ruin are all going to break my heart a little bit, so I am prepared for the tears. Another one that I've talked about so much but haven't gotten to, and honestly I don't know why because this would have been a quick read for June, but June was a crazy month with the move and everything, so a lot of books that should have happened didn't happen. And Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo was one of those that should have happened in June but didn't happen. This is the sequel to Six of Crows, which is like this really fun found family heist type of fantasy novel, which is in the Grishaverse, and the kind of prequel action can be seen in the Shadow and Bone show, which is on Netflix right now. I wanted to read this one before I watch the show just because I want to get the full story of the characters in the Six of Crows duology before I jump into the show. I know that the show doesn't go into the storyline, not yet, but it does go into the characters, so I was happy to at least have read Six of Crows. And this one, again, I think it's like 500 or some odd pages, so kind of long, but also it's a YA novel, and YA novels are not as dense to read as adult novels, so this one shouldn't take me too long. And this one is the one that's up next after I finish my current read. So that is really exciting. So I'm pretty certain that July, this is gonna get done. The next book for July, and we're going through this so fast because I just know exactly what I'm talking about, and I also can't give too much synopsis because a lot of these are sequels. I think all of my July TBR, save for like a couple of them, are all sequels. So it's gonna be hard to talk about the synopses, but you guys can always look up the first of the books and see what the series is about. And that leads me to the next book, which is also a sequel, and that is A Betrayal in Winter, I believe is the second one in the Long Price Quartet. So I'll be reading book number 2 in this quartet. I am in the middle of book number 1 right now, but I should be finished that by the end of June, early July, and then able to get to book number 2. I think Pete over at Ponderings with Pete, or Pete Ponderings, I can't remember exactly, but I will link him down below. I think it's Ponderings with Pete. He is hosting like a unofficial buddy read on the Shell Space Discord for this quartet, and the first one we read in June, and then the second one we're going to read in this month, in the month of July. So this is a very unique adult fantasy. It doesn't seem to have like a ton of magic in it yet, but it is very unique in the way that it's written. So it took me a little bit of time to get into, but now I'm really enjoying the story because there's a lot of intrigue in the first one. Things are really subtle in this world too, and that also gives another layer to this novel. I'm also of the opinion that this is going to be a really fantastic quartet for a reread, because I think that there are a lot of nuances and subtleties that I'm not going to catch my first time reading this. So we'll see. I'm excited. I've heard a lot of good things from a lot of different people that have different reading tastes about this quartet, and it is also Daniel Abraham, the author, who has, I think, written and produced The Expanse TV series, and then another series that he's co-written with another author. So this is one of his solo series. So I have high hopes, just judging on other people's opinions and the fact that it's written by Daniel Abraham. So we will see. The next book is actually a July buddy pick for the Atlantis Discord, which I run with my friend Kristen, and it's called The Bridge Kingdom by Yes, it's Daniela L. Jensen. I got that right. Oh my gosh, there's so many different author names that sometimes I'm not very good with them. But this is a fantasy romance, I think, about a woman who's sent to assassinate royalty or a king, and then they end up like falling in love. Something like that. I could be completely wrong, but I'm trying to go into this one blind because I think it's short, I think it's fantasy romance, and I think if you read the synopsis, it does give quite a bit away. And I want to kind of go into it without knowing too much, because I think it'll be like delicious and complex and fun fantasy romance to read. I think it's gonna be a quick read, and I think we're gonna read the second one in the series in August, just because if we're gonna start a series, we might as well continue on to the next one that's been released. So far, we've been reading books where only the first has been released, or it's been the latest in a series. So we'll see what Kristen says, but I'm hoping we'll read the sequel to this in August. I've heard really good things about this being a fantasy romance, and I just feel like I need to jump on that train and get that read, because I have been very much into fantasy romance these days, and why not give this one a shot? If you guys have read this, because I know it's been a popular one on BookTube, let me know in the comments down below. I'm really curious to see what others thought of it. I have seen one or two booktubers that I actually speak to on a regular basis say that they really, really loved it. So I have very high hopes for it, but always welcome your opinions as well. The next book that I want to read, which I think also has some romantic elements, is Prison Healer by Lynette Noni, and this has also been blurred by Sarah J. Maas. Ooh, it's really shiny because I have this protective sleeve on it, which I really need to find ones that actually fit the book, which this one does not fit the book, but I was moving and I was desperate for something to protect some of my beautiful book copies so that they don't get hurt in transit, so I just ended up putting these on anyways. But if anyone has suggestions for book sleeves on Amazon that fit the books beautifully, let me know. This one is not ideal, but it's good for now. So this is about a prison healer, but a healer that has been at the prison for a very long time. She ends up, I think, healing the queen, or being assigned to heal the queen, who has then been sentenced to these trials that she has to do. But our main character then volunteers in the queen's place, because the queen is so sickly, to do all of these kind of challenges or trials. And that, I think, is the premise of the story. So I'm really intrigued by this premise. I feel like it almost kind of sounds Hunger Games-ish, and I do love Hunger Games, but I don't want a million stories of the same thing. thing. So I feel like I'm gonna be a little more critical of this one. Hopefully it's not too Hunger Games-esque, but I hope that it's still really enjoyable and it's still really fun. This copy is absolutely beautiful. If I didn't have this sleeve, I would show you the naked hardback because it's gorgeous. However, since Sarah J. Maas blurbed it and I do really enjoy her stories, I'm hoping that this is one that I also really enjoy. I haven't actually heard too much about this. I think one other booktuber I've seen review it and she really enjoyed it, but I haven't seen too many other folks read this or review it. So I'm really tempted to read it and then give my own review on this channel of this book once I get to it. But I know that the second one I think is coming out in the fall of this year. So it's moving really quickly in terms of how fast these books come out, which is great because we all know when you have to wait more than a year for the next in a series, it's really friggin' painful. And the last book that I will be reading, or that I plan to read, is actually an e-arc that I'm getting from NetGalley, and that's called A Dragon Bird in the Fern by Laura Ruckert, I think is how you pronounce her name. This one is actually categorized as fantasy and I think also romance and sci-fi. So I believe this one is technically a fantasy romance novel. And so far the synopsis sounds pretty straightforward. We have a Princess Yara whose older sister Cilia was killed, and so Scylla's ghost is wandering the town and the tunnels tormenting people. Scylla's betrothed then comes to their kingdom and demands that Giara, her younger sister who's still alive, take Scylla's place and marry that king for that kingdom. So she has to do this. Meanwhile, she finds out that the assassin, the murderer of her sister, actually is a person that comes from the kingdom where her fiance is from. And so she figures, hey, if I marry him, I can go and I can hunt the assassin down. Just I think where our story begins. And if there are romantic elements to this, I'm wondering, is it gonna be with the king or is it gonna be with the assassin? And like, what else, what other juicy things are we gonna find out? Even though it's YA, I hope this has like a bit of a darker edge to it. But either way, I haven't heard too many people talk about this. I know one other person has also received an arc of it and is planning on reading it in July. And I will definitely be doing a review on this one for sure. This one is coming out 3rd of August. And I believe I put this on my anticipated releases for summer because I am anticipating this novel. It just sounds like something I would really enjoy. And if it is a really good fantasy novel, you best believe you guys will hear it here. And I will put that in my dedicated review. So those are the 7-ish novels that I have planned to really read for the month of July. Of course, things might change. I might swap things out, but I do have a couple in the back of my mind that I'd also like to fit in. And if I'm able to fit those in, then we'll have a few more to discuss during my wrap up. If you've read any of these books, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear if you enjoyed them, if you disliked them, and why. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That really does help support my channel. And if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more, please do not hesitate to subscribe.